Let the minutes reflect all managers present with the exception of Manager Wynant.
Madam President, so we have a quorum, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, then I nominate Manager Bradley to be the secretary.
What a great honor.
I never finished my statement. Manager Wynant is absent with prior notice. Next thing is to appoint pro tem secretary.
You beat me to it, Manager Wall.
Yeah, that's why I did that. Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
You need a second though.
Well, I'll second it, I guess. You're the.
Well, with great pride, I accept.
Motion made, accepted. All in favor?
Aye.
Next thing we'll do is set the agenda.
Staff have no adjustments?
No adjustments. Any board members want to change anything on the agenda today? Seeing none, I'll need a motion.
Madam President, I'll move to accept the agenda.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the minutes.
Madam President, I move to approve the August 22nd, 2022 regular meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, consent agenda. Any comments, questions, Patrick?
Yeah, President Preiner, thank you. That's a little loud. So we have two things here on the consent agenda related to permits. The first one is 2266. That's kind of standard. It's a permit application for stormwater management. I did kind of want to point out the second one that we have here. It is a WACA sequencing approval. I included a memo in the packet on page 23 to kind of give a little background on it. This isn't something that we typically bring before the board. A sequencing application is usually included in a replacement plan, and so you'd see the whole broad permit application that covers the development or whatever that might be. So this is just a sequencing approval. There would be a permit application that would need to come through in the future for the actual stormwater management and wetland replacement and all of that. So just wanted to give a little background on there before consideration.
Thank you. Any questions on that?
Madam President? So despite my longevity on the board, I've always thought I knew what sequencing means. And I still think I know what it is, but I'd rather hear what sequencing means.
Sure. So yes, Manager Bradley. So this is a request. It's kind of for planning purposes. It's an assessment of expected wetland impacts. So they're not actually doing the replacement of it at this point. There it is somewhat to get feedback on a proposal. So it's strictly for how did they avoid and minimize impacts to the extent feasible for their project.
So the way I had in my mind put it was a way of determining which alternative would have the least impact. So you would set them up in 1, 2, 3 in the sequence of their impacts.
Correct. So yes, in the application,
got it right.
yeah, there's 3 alternatives that they show,
Yeah.
and then they have selected one. It doesn't have, I believe, the least amount of impact, but the other ones don't work for XYZ.
Thank you.
And it would be better to have 2 separate motions on these. It's written that way. I'm just wondering if because it's a little different situation.
Yes.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion for API Real Estate LLC.
Madam President, I'll move API Real Estate LLC 2206 as to be approved in the consent agenda as outlined above in the table of contents in accordance with the Rcwd engineer's findings and recommendations dated September 7th, 2022.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Application 22-0363, City of Lino Lakes. Need a motion?
Well, Madam President, I'll move Wetland Conservation Act sequencing application requiring board action number 22-063, City of Lino Lakes, be approved as outlined in the above table of contents in accordance with the Rcwd Permit Coordinator Wetland Specialist findings and recommendation dated September 2nd, 2022.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Water Quality Grant. Any questions on that, or any presentation?
President Preiner, these can move unless there's.
Unless there's a question.
Nothing unique. Thank you.
Madam President, I move to approve the water quality grant in this consent agenda number W22-01, Alexander and Corey Triemert, Triemert, as set forth in staff's recommendation.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. I do have a question in that, so now they turn it to prairie grass. Is there a limited amount of time in case they decide they want to do something else in the future? We're allowing them to change it. That doesn't mean they can't change it back unless there's a stipulation somewhere. Molly, I guess that's you.
Madam President, Board of Managers, I will be introducing you to Tara Kelly. She is the technician working on this project over at Washington Conservation District. She would probably be able to give you a better timeline for the project. Tara, I'd like to invite you to answer Madam President's question.
Well, good morning. The timeline for establishment for a prairie typically is about 2 to 3 years before the prairie becomes fully established. After that point, it enters more of the management phase. In terms of how long the prairie is established, that would be whatever is in the cost share contract. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but whatever is spelled out in your cost share contract that he signed will be the amount of time it has to stay in place. Typically in other watersheds, I've seen 5 years, I've seen 10 years. It's usually somewhere around those numbers.
10 years? Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the regular board meeting is now going to be recessed, and the public hearing is open on the Rice Creek Watershed District's proposed ordering of the Johanna Creek Carp Barrier Project. The purpose of the hearing is to receive comments from the public on the project proposed to be constructed in partnership with the city of New Brighton. Before the Watershed District can provide funds for capital improvement, state law requires that the Board of Managers hold a public hearing, receive public comment, and make a judgment that the project is sound and cost-effective project to help fulfill our water resource goals. That is the purpose of today's hearing. In accordance with state law, notice of the hearing was published for 2 successive weeks in St. Paul Pioneer Press, mailed to all cities within the district, as well as the 4 district counties. First, I will ask Kyle Axtell, our project manager, to give a brief presentation of the proposed project. When his remarks are completed, the floor will be open for any members of the public who wish to address the board. At that time, if you wish to comment, please come forward at the podium and state your name and address for the record. If you have a written copy of your statement or any documents that you'd like to submit, please give them to Teresa Stasica, our meeting clerk. During public comments, managers are welcome to ask questions of commenters to clarify their remarks. I also may ask Mr. Axtell to respond to any technical question raised. Managers will hold their comments about the project until the project public hearing is closed. At that time, the board will have opportunity to discuss it. Kyle, please go ahead.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, thank you. Here for our public hearing for the proposed Johanna Creek Carp Barrier Project. I'll note just some detail on what was referenced there. The public notice for this was published in the Pioneer Press newspaper on August 27th and September 3rd, 2022. The mailed notice was sent to the cities in our watershed district as well as our 4 counties on August 29th. It was posted on our district website and at the office on August 25th, and our email noticing listserv went out on August 25th as well. So just a brief outline of the presentation today. Briefly about the Long Lake Carp Management Program. Matt Koshin, our esteemed colleague, has provided substantial amounts of information on that over the years, but I'll touch base on how that affects this project, as well as its proposed location, what the concept of this fish barrier is going to look like, cost estimate and funding, and construction timing and site access. As we heard from Matt recently, our current goal for removal of adult carp from the Long Lake Lino Chain of Lake system is at 60% annually. Our existing project at our Neptune barrier at Rice Creek, just upstream of the lake to the north, upstream of Long Lake, has been successful. You've seen this data before, looking at the total numbers of carp removed over the recent years. And what we've been seeing, and Matt talked about this several months ago, is that more and more of these tagged carp that we have in Long Lake in the system, we're seeing them trying to exit the lake to the south as they're getting maybe frustrated or having limited success moving north through Rice Creek. And just this year, this spring, 20% roughly of our tagged carp migrated south through Johanna Creek, or the Lake Johanna outlet. Goes by multiple names. And that allows them access up into the E2 wetland complex for reproduction. So this is something that we'd like to kind of get a handle on. You can see here, that's just a little diagram showing they're not able to get north, so they're starting to head south towards Lake Johanna.
Kyle, can
Yes.
I interrupt you for one second?
Yeah.
Did you say they weren't going south before, so they've switched tactics?
Initially, yeah, I don't believe when we first started this program there were many fish at all moving south. It wasn't too much of a concern. We haven't noted in our carp management plan that this is a location that we had anticipated some future management as that we became more and more successful managing fish that were migrating through the creek. So they're getting smarter.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the proposed project location here for this barrier is on property owned by the city of New Brighton. So what I'm going to call Johanna Creek during this presentation, leaves the E2 wetland complex, flows under. In this case, you see 10th Street Northwest there, and this is the aerial photo you see there is a portion of the New Brighton Community Center, formerly known as the Family Service Center. Ramsey County Library is located there, if you're familiar. And so the creek kind of flows through that southern portion of the property, ultimately goes under 694 and into Long Lake. This location is ideal for a structure of this type. It limits access not only further up the creek, but as you can kind of see on the photo there's another channel that goes to the south, directly under 10th Street there. And that provides access to a couple of stormwater ponds and things that are on New Brighton's additional properties. So barrier in this location will limit access to really any spawnable waters for carp that are upstream from this site. It's also in a fairly, I say, relatively secluded area. It's wooded right there, and we expect to have limited interaction from the public at that location, as opposed to right down at the Long Lake boat launch, which is owned by Ramsey County. And the city of New Brighton is at this point very open to working with us on this project. The concept for the barrier that we're using is more or less identical to the barrier that was just installed a couple of years ago at Ramsey Washington Judicial Ditch 1 by Bald Eagle Lake. That design has worked very well. It's kind of a new take on the design we originally used at the Rondo Lake outlet with the horizontal aluminum tubes to create the bars. So that works great to allow flow through. It doesn't impact water levels in the ditch. You don't see a huge difference during rain events upstream or downstream of the barrier. So very effective in that way without causing additional flooding. And we get long-term materials here. The vinyl sheet pile doesn't rust. It's very durable, as well as the aluminum is less corrosive. So this project, and we'll talk about this later during our agenda, but the project was awarded a $50,000 Bowser Watershed-based implementation funding grant this past August. So that's exciting. And total expected construction costs are merely $55,000. Obviously, we'll find out more when we get quotes from contractors, but we're expected just a minimal $5,000 contribution in district ad valorem funds from our approved 2022 budget. And we are anticipating constructing this project this fall. Likely November, December, so maybe early winter would be a better way to say it. We've worked with New Brighton staff, anticipating they will provide the 25-year access agreement for construction, operation, and maintenance of this barrier. We're going through final review with city staff and legal counsel right now. And so again, that's drafted and not yet finalized, but we will have that in place before any construction would take place. With that, I guess any questions or comments from the public, and otherwise we'll get to this later on the board agenda.
Is there anybody in the public that'd like to speak, either online or just to note, there's nobody present today? Anybody online that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none and hearing none, we're going to recess our meeting, or we're going to close our meeting, and then we're going to go back to our regular agenda.
Close the public hearing.
Public hearing. Okay, so the next thing is open mic. Seeing nobody in the chambers for open mic, we'll continue on to items requiring board action. Ordering Johanna Creek Carp Barrier Project. Kyle?
Madam President, members of the board, in your packet, we have draft resolution 2022-18, which would order the Johanna Creek Carp Barrier Project. Again, we just held our public hearing on this project. Stated before, we anticipate project construction costs around $55,000, of which $50,000 is coming from that watershed-based implementation funding grant. We already have preliminary plans put together through Houston Engineering for this project, again mimicking the prior project that they designed for us. Once ordered, we would get those plans finalized for construction and get them out for contractor quotes. And I say, unless there's any additional questions, staff recommends approval of the resolution in your packet.
Thank you, Kyle. Okay, we have resolution 2022-18.
Madam President, I would move resolution number 2022-18, ordering the Johanna Creek Carp Barrier Project pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 103B.251, which authorizes us to receive and use the Clean Water Fund grant of $50,000 for this project.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Madam President, I just want to note that the district has had decades and decades of working on carp control. It's one of our priority things because of the value it gives us for making certain that phosphorus doesn't increase in the lakes and the streams. And we've been through a lot of programs. I remember attending meetings in the early 90s, late 80s when they used poisons, and now we're down to more sophisticated and successful manners. We've used nets of years, and so it's been, I'm happy to see this continue and work forward on.
And apparently, we're better at it than one of our fellow watershed districts is having trouble in Lake Como.
Yeah, you know, and Manager Bradley, that's a good point. It's amazing.
No, let's finish.
It's amazing how many watershed districts I read about now these days that are actually doing carp control.
Yeah,
is
they
what
are.
I wanted to get out.
Yeah, they are.
Not just how much trouble they have, but you see it all the time now in the paper.
Okay, call for a vote. Waller.
Yes.
Winan absent. Bradley.
Yes.
Wagaman.
Yes.
Reiner, yes. Motion passes. Okay. I think you're still on here. Ramsey Dish County 2, 3, and 5.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. For your consideration today, we have Houston Engineering Task Order 2022-10. And this goes back to, what was it, February or March or so. Earlier this year, we had a discussion at a workshop about moving forward to some preliminary planning phases. 3 projects associated with the Ramsey County Ditches 2, 3, and 5 Basic Water Management Project. Again, this is working with cities of New Brighton, St. Anthony, and Roseville to further, in many cases, flood control projects, also water quality improvement projects where possible through that drainage network to help alleviate and address flood management or flood risk management. So the 3 projects that we identified that were ready for kind of the next phase of preliminary planning were what we're calling the Upper South Hanson Park Project, Jones Lake Outlet Modification and Dredging, and the Silver Lake Outlet Modification, which is a much smaller project than the other 2. But the first 2, Upper South Hanson and Jones Lake, required really substantial planning and project development to really get them to a point where we can pursue, I would say, reliably make an attempt to pursue grant funding from external sources, as well as deal with the variety of regulatory concerns that may be associated with these projects in terms of working in public waters, wetlands, things of that nature. At that last workshop that I mentioned, I don't remember the exact date offhand, but the board expressed interest in having staff move these forward, so we've been working since that time with Houston on this task order to take these 3 projects and move them kind of through preliminary plan development, regulatory analysis, cost estimation, things of that nature. You'll see there's a pretty detailed scope, several pages associated with that task order in your packet. And so, and at this point, staff is recommending that we proceed with that. And we'll start this year. Likely work will continue into next year. to get this done and get these to a point we can move them forward with our partners. The total cost of the task order for all three projects is not to exceed $167,500. I can see on the first page of my memo, I do have that roughly broken down into what that cost is for each of the three projects for your information. Hampton Park at $62,000, Jones Lake at just under $79,000, and Silver Lake at just under $27,000. And again, the first two are kind of major prerequisite projects before the other slate of work in those areas could be really pursued. Silver Lake is kind of a small one that we can bite off pretty easily, we're thinking, and so we would do that at the same time. Open to any questions.
First we'll have a motion, then we can go to,
Madam President, I'll move to approve Houston Engineering Task Order number 2022-010 for the amount not to exceed $167,500, authorizing the administrator to sign the contract.
Second that.
we have a motion and a second. Further discussion.
So, Madam President, this is a continuation, and the public doesn't always realize it, but it's, I reckon, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago, we did the Southwest study in the district, Chris, is that, we began there? And we've had the LIDAR since then, and so this is another step in that process of managing the stormwater, surface stormwater runoff on there. And so, it's a very long-term, step-by-step process in order to reach our goals there of making sure people don't have a flooding control problem.
Okay,
One question, if I could?
sure.
Chris, page 51, you state that there will be 6 joint coordinating meetings with the staff from the city of New Brighton. And on page 52, you have a bullet point which says the 6 stakeholder meetings are with New Brighton and St. Anthony. I assume that it's with both.
Madam President, Manager Waller. The first two projects are both in St. Anthony. The third one, Silver Lake Outlet, is, or I should say the first two are in New Brighton. The third one is in St. Anthony. So we would anticipate that we would have probably at least one meeting with the St. Anthony staff, probably one out of those 6, but the majority of them would be with New Brighton.
I assume you're answering Manager Bradley. Let's not,
Yeah, that was me that asked.
he shouldn't be shoulder, you shouldn't have to shoulder him by,
He's upset about that.
I didn't want you to get, good grief.
I don't think anyone confuses us.
Okay, we have a
Thank you.
motion and a second. Any further
Let's hope
discussion?
not, huh? Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Kyle?
Thank you, we'll get to work on that. Madam President, members of the board, next for your consideration, this is a little bit of a informational item, which I'm happy to report on, and then some action at the end. And this, basically, staff would just like to provide you with the results of our fiscal year 22-23 Rice Creek Metro Watershed-based implementation funding convene process. Again, we've talked about this at various times over the years. It's a biennial process, typically. And this is the third cycle that Bowser has gone through. It has changed each time. We think we've gotten to a pretty good place that works well, at least for our area. And I can report that a convene process, which Rice Creek staff, myself, shepherded through, worked really well. We had great participation from our partners. We've got all of them listed here in the memo. In addition to the Rice Creek Watershed District, the Anoka Soil and Water Conservation District, Washington Soil and Water Conservation District were involved. Ramsey County Parks Soil and Water Conservation Division, Washington County, and the cities of Moundsview and New Brighton were the primary, if you will, voting members of this committee. White Bear Township served as an alternate representative for our municipalities. Hennepin County elected not to participate due to their very small area of the watershed, although they were kept apprised of all of our activities throughout. We met 3 different times between end of May and end of July to kind of decide, and in conjunction with Bowser staff as well. I should note that they were present as well and very helpful. to basically decide how we were going to propose projects, what the criteria would be, how we wanted to manage that, how the funding would be allocated. Ultimately decided that it would be kind of a, everybody submit projects that they were interested in. So we made that overture to all of our partners, all of the cities and counties, whether not just that were in attendance, but all of our partners throughout the watershed, of course. Ultimately, the Watershed District had 3 proposals that were approved by the convene committee, and then there was one other proposal from Washington Soil and Water Conservation District that was approved, and those are listed here. I'll read through them. The Hardwood Creek Livestock Waste Storage Facility, which is the one proposed by Washington SWCD, was approved for submission to Bowser at $257,796. If you're familiar, this is a project that Rice Creek has already committed $30,000 in cost share funding to over in Hugo on Hardwood Creek. I'm not mentioning the landowner's name because Bowser has Tennyson Act stuff that we're not supposed to use the landowner's name in project titles or contracts, so I'm just respecting that right now, although we've used the name previously. And then the 3 projects that Rice Creek proposed that were approved were the Clearwater Creek Stabilization Scoping Project. This we've talked about as the phase 3 of restoration work on Anoka, Washington, JD3. And I'm being clear here that phase is truly more of a restoration project. It's not a traditional 103E drainage repair, and that distinction is important for Bowser to fund this work. And then the Highway 61 ponds improvement scoping. This is another feasibility study to look at our district facility on Ramsey, Washington, JD1 by Highway 61. We have 2 ponds there that are in need of maintenance. We're aware of that. We're not looking at the maintenance work specifically with this, but how we can improve upon that facility and make it a better project for additional water quality improvement for Bald Eagle Lake in conjunction with that maintenance. And then lastly, the Johanna Creek Common Carp Barrier, which was just approved earlier in your agenda for $50,000. So between those 4 projects, we do have full utilization of the allocation from Bowser to the Rice Creek Watershed of $407,796. And again, Rice Creek Watershed District will be using $150,000 of that for our own implementation work, and the balance going to the project, which we are also a partner on in Washington County. So very excited to that. Just wanted to share that with you. And maybe any questions about that before I move on?
I do. How many projects do you normally submit? They pick 3 of your projects. How many do you turn in?
So we had, I think there were 2 other projects that we were talking about during the process. By the time we got to July, they weren't quite ripe enough. And we were trying to move this forward fairly quickly, really more than anything to get that, so that we were able to get that Johanna Creek Carp Barrier in this fall, which the committee recognized and appreciated. So we backed off of the other 2 projects, and there wouldn't have been enough funding to fully fund all 6 anyway. Right. These 4 were able to be fully funded with those dollars. And so that just worked out really well, and the committee felt that was a good way to proceed. The other projects could come forward, next year or 2 years from now when they're ready. So,
okay, thank you,
Madam President. So Kyle, the conservation districts also get dollars, in projects, and sometimes we're partners with them, and sometimes we're not. Do you know if they have dollars for additional projects that aren't listed here that are in our district?
So
Anoka or Washington or even Ramsey?
Through this program,
or any other programs?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm not personally familiar with all of the funding sources that are available to conservation districts. They do have some avenues through Bowser funds that we don't participate in directly, and I don't know what their balances are, if you will, in those areas. So I don't know that I have a good answer for that, other than I'm not sure.
No, Madam President, well, thank you. So the next time you see Riggs, let's do a check and see if he's spending some money in our district, because sometimes we've paid for studies to help him out, and if he got a project out of it. And in here, we should keep that in our
Yeah.
communication with our partnerships with them, because that shows how well the coordination between the two organizations works.
Yeah, Madam President, if I may, Manager Waller as well, the other two projects that we had that we did back off from are both in Washington County, and both actually would be in strong partnership with the Conservation District. I can say that much. One would be up at Clear Lake, and the other one is down at Lost Lake in Matamidi. So just not quite ripe to go for this funding source, but we anticipate you'll see those in the future.
So, okay, so you're saying that the Conservation District didn't submit either one of those independently?
No, we would have, likely
You would
the
know.
Watershed District would have been the lead in working with
Yeah,
them as a consultant.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Madam President? Kyle, the Highway 61 ponds is, if I understand it correctly, at this point, it's just a feasibility study to determine how to address the issues related to those two ponds?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no construction at this time.
They could use some tidying up.
Did we do the motion already?
Yeah, so, Madam President, so what we have for your consideration today in terms of action is, in order to obtain these grant funds, we have to enter into a grant agreement with Bowser and submit a work plan for Bowser's approval, and those are located in your packet behind my memo. And staff recommends that the draft work plan be submitted to Bowser, looking for board approval of that, and that the board authorize the administrator to execute the grant agreement with Bowser upon Bowser's approval of that work plan. I will note, I did ask our board conservationist, Michelle Jordan, for some feedback on that draft work plan. I received it while I was away on vacation, reviewed it this morning. There will be some minor changes I'll need to make to it, but nothing material in order to meet Bowser's requirements. So, as you'll see in the draft motion I have includes that, including any modifications to the work plan as may be required by Bowser. And I can confirm that there are no material changes required.
Okay, we'll need a motion.
Madam President, I move to direct staff to submit the draft work plan as presented to Bowser for approval, and authorizes the administrator to execute the grant agreement upon Bowser approval of the work plan, including any modifications of the work plan as may be required by Bowser.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Nick?
Yes, President Preiner, the next item before the board is a resolution to adopt the 2023 budget and direct certification of the 2023 tax levy. There are no changes. We held our public hearing at a past meeting. On page 74 of the packet, you'll see the total budget layout totaling $8,344,087. On page 73, you'll see the $5,495,009 to be certified to the 4 counties of the district. I'll just make note that this work does include the budget transfers that we discussed that are within our budget.
Okay,
That is it.
thank you. We have resolution 2022-19.
Madam President, I would move to approve Resolution 22-19 to adopt the 2023 budget and direct certification of the 2023 tax levy with the following resolutions. That the Rice Creek Watershed District Board of Managers adopts a 2023 general fund and plan implementation budget totaling $8,344,087. Further resolving that a levy of 0.048% of taxable market value not to exceed $250,000 be certified to the counties of Anoka, Ramsey, Hennepin, and Washington, and levied upon all taxable property in the Rice Creek Watershed District for the year 2023 for the purpose of paying the general fund expenses of the district as provided by Minnesota Statute Section 103D.905, Subdivision 3, and further resolving that a levy of $5,495,009 be certified to the counties of Anoka, Ramsey, Hennepin, and Washington, and levied upon all taxable property in the Rice Creek Watershed District for the year 2023, as authored by the Metropolitan Surface Water Management Act, Minnesota Statute Section 103B.241, for the purpose of paying the costs of preparing and implementing a watershed management plan. Let's see what else. Guess that's it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion.
Madam President, just there was discussion last time we had this before us, and whether or not the potential changes in property value would affect how much money we receive as a result of this. It's my understanding that we're gonna receive the amount of money that we've asked to be recovered, specifically not to exceed $250,000 for our administrative expenses and $5,495,009 from the general levy, regardless of what the property values are. You clarify that? Is that correct?
Yes, President Priner, Manager Bradley, that is correct.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Call the vote. Manager Bradley?
Yes.
Manager Wagman?
Yes.
Manager Waller?
No.
Manager Wynan absent. Manager Priner, yes, motion passes.
President Priner, I'll just make note that the district's Truth and Taxation meeting will be on December 14th at 6 PM, scheduled for the City of Shoreview chambers.
And Madam President, we always have the opportunity to lower the tax rate between then and now.
Yes, we have.
Thank you.
Okay, consideration of the Minnesota Association of Watershed Districts MOD Strategic Plan. Kendra?
Yes, hi everyone. Good morning. Madam President, Board of Managers, I have drafted a letter on behalf of the board after the workshop summarizing and depicting your responses and comments to the MOD strategic plan. And any edits or changes are very welcomed on that letter since it will be coming from you all. And if there are no edits or changes to the letter, then board action on whether to send it or not send it to MOD is needed.
Okay. Any discussion on the letter we received, the draft today? All right. Questions, discussion, anything?
Madam President, I just would note that, Kendra, you obviously have a good ear for listening, because I think you captured the comments quite well.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we need a motion.
Madam President, I move that we send the September 14, 2002 letter to MAUD regarding their planning documents, strategic plan document as presented to us today.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Well, Madam President, as I said at the workshop the other day, I didn't feel that the planning document was anything of significance. And so I really don't support some of the things that are said in that document. One of them, of course, was that I pointed out to you is that they need to consult with the Watershed District administrators as an organization. This, like I said, that planning document would be an excellent paper for someone who's working on their master's or something, but in practicality, it's not I don't see it functioning. So, but anyways, that's just my comment. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Okay. Thank you, Kendra. And Kyle? Pay request? No?
President Priner, there's one more.
Oops, missed the resolution. Oh, we better get that. Thank you.
President Priner, Board of Managers, on page 105 of your packet, you have the MOD resolutions for consideration
Oh,
that
okay.
we had at the workshop as well. And Kendra obviously is available.
Okay, so we got the resolution. Does anybody have any comments?
The only comment I would have is I still have a problem on that salt deal. I just can't wrap my arms around the limited liability or taking liability away. so I will be voting no, but that's my only comment.
So, Madam President, maybe we could break the resolutions into separate vote for each one.
Certainly.
Everybody good with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, then let's go one by one.
Madam President, I'll move that the Rice Creek Watershed District draft proposal, a resolution to the Minnesota Association of Watershed Districts obtain stable funding for flood damage reduction program be forwarded on to the association.
Second.
Motion made second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next motion.
Madam President, I'll move also that the proposed resolution to the Minnesota Association of Watershed Districts about the limited liability for certified commercial salt applicators be moved on.
I'll second that.
Madam President, so I don't really see any need for the district itself to support this. As I said in past, this particular item has had a tremendous amount of support from non-watershed district organizations, and I don't believe it was the association that was pushing this forward. I don't recall the lady's name. It spent a lot of time at many of the legislative committee meetings that I listened to, and so it will be adequately lobbied down at the state, and I think the time for our association lobbyists and energy can be spent on issues other issues that are more direct to the district, such as the flood damage reduction program.
Okay.
Madam President, I'm going to vote in favor of it. Clearly, Rice Creek cares about the damage being done to our lakes by salt. And these are been looked at by people who know more about this than I do. And so I would support this. This just merely tells Maud that we as a watershed district care about the impact of salt on our lakes and would give them an opportunity to tell legislators that fact.
Okay, I think we'll call the vote. Manager Waller?
No.
Manager Bradley?
Yes,
Manager Wagaman?
No.
Manager Priner? Yes.
so fails.
Fails. That's why you need 5 members. Okay,
But we have the quorum.
check register.
We got a pay request. for
Oh, yeah,
Mike.
now we go back to Kyle, sorry.
You're anxious to get us out of here, aren't you?
No. Never said it.
Madam President, members of the board, for your consideration is a second partial pay request from Vite and Company Incorporated for the Long Lake Sediment Basin Dredging Project. Happy to report, again, the dredging is 100% complete at this time. We're simply at a point where dewatering is underway still, and Vite will be moving the material off of the property, the dewatering site property, and returning that to its prior condition. Before the end of the month, we have informed the landlord up there that we will be terminating our lease at the end of September. So that is our deadline to get out of there. Don't see any issues with that at this point in time. With that, staff would recommend that second payment be issued to Vite and Company in the amount of $444,833.70, as detailed in their pay request number 2. That has been, of course, reviewed and approved by the district engineer.
Okay, we'll need a motion.
Madam President, I move to approve the Vite and Company pay request submitted and certified by the district engineer, direct staff to issue payment in the amount of $444,833.70.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam President, I move to approve the check register dated September 14th, 2022 in the amount of $142,058.96 prepared by Redpath and Company.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, items for discussion. District engineer updates. Anything new, Chris?
Madam President, I don't have anything specifically to report on our district projects, but I thought I could give you a little update on drainage group meeting I attended.
Yes, please.
So that was last Thursday. Typically, they have, while the legislature is not in session, they have a monthly meeting. And they've been trying now, as we're starting to move past some of the COVID protocols of having them in person. This one happened to be online because of a few other issues. One of the topics that was talked most about during a meeting was the drainage project registry. That was that piece of legislation that was introduced earlier in the year that was going to require drainage authorities to put themselves on a registry anytime that they would not only do or have an action related to a petitioned improvement or project like that, but also would include any repairs or maintenance activities that the drainage authority would complete. They would have to go on the registry and then wait 30 days in order to complete that work. So that really caused a large brouhaha with a lot of different entities, including the Drainage Inspectors Association. There was a request by the one of the entities that was involved in the submission of the legislation. I think they're called the Friends of the Minnesota River Valley. The Drainage Work Group requested them to submit a document outlining the rationale for why there's an issue or why they see there's an issue that would prompt the need for such legislation. So they produced that document, and it was discussed at the Drainage Work Group meeting, and a lot of it centered on their perception that downstream interests weren't able to be engaged in the process of a drainage improvement or other activity and provide input on that before the action had gone very far in the process, including development of engineering reports and public hearings and that sort of thing. So they wanted the ability to be able to become engaged in the process early prior to some of those meetings. So there was back and forth discussion on that. There are some on the Drainage Work Group that are having a firm stance that no, there's no validity or value to this at all. There's some that are kind of in the middle that are saying, well, yes, there are some aspects of what they're requesting that aren't going to be problematic for the drainage authorities, but we need to, kind of bring it back toward the middle. And then, of course, the folks that introduced the legislation or were supportive of it, mainly the environmental organizations. So they're going to be setting up a subcommittee to talk about this further and look to how they might move that toward the middle. I think one of the things that I would have the most problem with, and I think most other drainage authorities would as well, is the issue of having a requirement to do that registry for drainage system maintenance or repairs. The environmental groups threw out a bone there saying, well, we wouldn't require it for any actions that would be under the 175,000 limit that you'd have for obtaining open bid proposals. In my mind, I don't think that's far enough. I think that really anything that is a non-petition activity should not be required to do that registry. It doesn't accomplish what you would want to accomplish anyway if it's not petitioned action. So there's going to be more on that. They've also talked a little bit about other things that they want to be working on over the next several months as the Drainage Work Group, including talking more about the adequacy of the outlet and how we determine whether an outlet is adequate, particularly for drainage improvements and those kind of actions. And then talking about cumulative effects of drainage projects and whether that the drainage authority should be considering those cumulative effects when ordering a drainage project. And again, those are issues that are being pushed mostly by those environmental advocates as well as the DNR. So we'll be seeing more on those later. I don't think those last two items have as much of an impact on the Rice Creek Watershed District, since you don't see those kind of petitions coming forward, but I'll keep you updated on how those things go as well.
Who's representing their legislation? They submitted it, who was there?
I think one of the submitters for it was Representative Hansen, I believe. I know that, again, the Friends of the Minnesota River Valley were ones that were involved with helping to draft that. I think the Center for Environmental Advocacy is also part of those discussions with the legislators that proposed it.
So,
But President Prater, I think Mr.
Oh.
Smith has something. he
Go
can-
ahead, Louis, and then we'll.
Not on this. No,
Not in
not in
this.
this. Okay.
Other questions for Chris? Anything?
well, it appears to me that it's just, the group in St. Paul, it doesn't have a central location. They have to go down and watch each individual drainage authority to see what's going on. And instead of them doing the work, they want the individual drainage authorities to do the cataloging work for them, and so they send them notice all the time, instead of paying attention to the local notices. That's what it seems to me, a regulation that just saves the work of the advocates of this particular legislation. I see no need for it myself. I just think it's unnecessary.
Okay, any other questions for Chris? Okay. Administrator updates?
President Prater, Board of Managers, nothing really since the workshop other than to say it's, the board's action at that meeting is being implemented, and I will create a quick memo and send out the assessment, email it, and we'll make arrangements with Manager Waller.
Okay. Go ahead,
Unless-
Louis.
does that-
Sure.
Madam President, members, I just had one other legal update that relates to drainage for you to be aware of. In the Red Lake Watershed District in the Red River Valley, there was a case recently where there were opponents to a drainage improvement project, and those opponents appealed the order for the drainage improvement, and the district court issued a decision deciding that the Watershed District had no jurisdiction over that drainage proceeding, over that improvement. And that is different than most of the attorneys working with drainage and watershed districts read the statute. There's a specific provision in the watershed law that says that when someone is filing a petition for an improvement of an existing drainage system, if that drainage system is in a watershed district, then it's the watershed district that has jurisdiction over that improvement proceeding. So I wanted you to be aware that both the Red River Watershed Management Board and the Minnesota Association of Watershed Districts have decided to file a friend of the court brief in the Minnesota Court of Appeals as that issue is appealed. And so we will keep you apprised of that.
Interesting.
So, Madam President, as the next thing that is manager updates, and so I'll move into this. I attended the executive board of MAUD meeting, and this was a discussion item there, as to what was going on, which Louis was in attendance to. And so it provoked my curiosity enough to go and read this decision to see what the problem is. And I, being a layman here, so bear with me. Forgive me for my explanation of this. There is a petition to a watershed district for an improvement, I believe. The watershed district had never transferred the authority of that particular drainage system to the watershed district.
The county had not?
The county had not. So there's no big argument about where the petition is to be filed, but what the objectors were, which were landowners, by the way, not the county or any government organization. They said, you got to go to the county and have it transferred first, because what you're doing, you're not following the processes that require the county, such as the auditor and the petitions. So being a layman that I am, the simplest thing to me would say transfer the authority from the county board, which they don't seem to object to that. They're not trying to hold on to it, to the Watershed District. Proceed with your processes and not waste time or money going to the appellate court, to the Supreme Court, because that's a couple of years of delay in anything that was looked at. And that's my novice approach to how to solve that, but my comment on that. I did attend the MOD meeting up there. We stayed in a hotel in the North Dakota side, which is kind of Canadian orientated, but had the most wonderful large photographs of Grand Forks, North Dakota and East Grand Forks, Minnesota, all through the lobby. Just tremendous. From photographs from the 1870s and 80s, and up to the I'd say World War II or so, even a couple after that. And it was just fascinating because I have kind of an interest in history to go around and spend time reading the walls of the hotel. I did attend the tour, which was an all-day bus tour, and I was approached by our esteemed legal counsel for my opinion on something. It's not often that happens, but he wanted to know what kind of a railroad car was parked on the siding. The Burlington Northern Railroad Company had 4 pile drivers up there, and they're putting in bridges in different places and equipment. So I was, for a change, I was sought out for my unskilled labor knowledge. The other meeting I attended was the Bowser meeting, and at the workshop I think we discussed most of the items that were significant about that. And so other than that, we will be having, the administrator and I will be having a meeting with the 2 county commissioners, Miron and Karwoski, on October 13th. It's scheduled for at the moment. We don't know if it's virtual, in person, or what. There's that. And then I believe on November the 1st will be the Washington County workshop with the watershed districts in the morning. We also have our partners meeting in the afternoon that day, by the way. So I don't really have any other updates at the moment that I can think of or that I wrote down to mention, so I'll yield the floor, Madam President.
Okay, Manager Bradley.
Nothing to add.
Manager Wagman.
I have nothing to add.
And I did attend the CAC meeting last week, and it went well. We have new members, and everybody's trying to learn their way around. So it wasn't a very long meeting, which was fine, but I think they're starting to gather information and learn about it. So it was nice to see. I have nothing else. Anybody want to make the motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That was easy.
So I have 4 different active.
Well,